6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
Head over heels, butterflies in the tummy, the apple of my eye. In English, there are many idioms to describe what it feels like to fall in love.
I didn't know you were such a romantic, Neil. But do you know what's actually happening in our brains when we fall in love? Because I'm sorry to say this, Neil, but it's more about brain chemistry than romance, specifically hormones, chemical messengers which the body releases into the blood to control our growth, mood, and, yes, falling in love.
Thanks for ruining my romantic ideas, Beth. And since my dreams are now shattered, why don't we spend the rest of this programme finding out exactly what is going on inside our bodies and brains when we fall in love? And of course, learn some useful new vocabulary too.
There's no doubt that being in love has the health benefit of reducing stress, even lengthening your life. But the hormones which the brain releases have an immediate effect as well. So, chemically speaking, what happens when lovers look into each other's eyes? Is it A, their body temperature increases, B, their heartbeats harmonise, or C, the hairs stand up on the back of their neck?
Is it all three? No, okay then. I'll guess it's B. Their heartbeats harmonise.
OK, we'll find out if that's correct at the end of the programme. According to Helen E. Fisher, self-help author and anthropologist at Rutgers University, there are 3 aspects of romantic love. Here's BBC Ideas to explain more.
Often lust comes first, but not always. For some people who are asexual, it may not happen at all. But for those who do experience lust, it's driven by the hormones estrogen and testosterone. It may feel purely carnal, but in fact, it's about the urge to mate and pass on your DNA via offspring. Without lust, it's fair to say our species would not survive.
Helen Fisher thinks the first aspect of love is purely physical. Lust, the strong feeling of sexual desire for someone. Lust is driven by the hormones estrogen in women and testosterone in men. A few people are asexual, meaning they don't feel sexual attraction for anyone of any gender.
Lust is hardwired into us through our DNA, and it drives us to have children. Helen thinks it's fair to say that without lust, our species would not survive. Here, she uses the phrase, "it's fair to say," to introduce an idea she believes to be true and reasonable.
Of course, love is not just physical. Here's BBC Ideas again to introduce Helen Fisher's second aspect of love, attraction.
The second aspect of romantic love is attraction, influenced by a neurotransmitter called dopamine. This is a feel-good substance released in our brain that is involved in driving us towards reward. Do something, get a dopamine hit, feel good. Eventually, dopamine will push us towards repeating that behaviour. This is why intense attraction feels like an addiction to another human being. Some people get stuck in that loop, always chasing the dopamine-soaked excitement of a new relationship.
This time, the hormone responsible is dopamine, a neurotransmitter that rewards our attraction to someone with pleasurable feelings. That's why dopamine is called a feel-good substance. The adjective feel-good can be used to describe anything causing happy and optimistic feelings about life, things like feel-good films or feel-good music.
Here, though, there's a downside. The dopamine hit of sexual attraction feels so good, we crave it more and more. Some people are always chasing the next relationship to get a new hit of pleasure and soon become stuck in a loop. An idiom meaning they're unable to break the habit of repeating the same patterns of behaviour over and over again.
It's fascinating to see the power which hormones have over us. But if you're an old-fashioned romantic like Neil, don't despair. And speaking as a romantic, how about the answer to my question?
Right, you asked me about the effect on the body when two lovers look deep into each other's eyes. I guessed it was that their heartbeats harmonise.
Which was the correct answer. In experiments, looking into the eyes produced hormones causing couples' hearts to beat in time. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we've learnt in this program, starting with the idiom head over heels, to be completely in love with someone.
Lust is a very strong feeling of sexual desire.
Someone who is asexual does not feel sexual attraction towards anyone of any gender.
The phrase "it's fair to say" is used to introduce a statement you believe to be true and reasonable.
The adjective feel good describes something which makes people feel happy and optimistic.
And finally, the idiom stuck in a loop describes someone unable to break the habit of repeating the same negative patterns of behaviour over and over again. Once again, our 6 minutes are up, but remember to join us again next time for more topical discussion and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minute English. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Neil. Here's your coffee, Sophie.
Neil, remember that staff meeting we had yesterday? Why did you agree to having decaf coffee in the kitchen when I know you don't like it and neither do I?
I know. It's just that the boss said that decaffeinated coffee, that's coffee with the caffeine removed, was a good idea. Healthier, you know. And then everyone else agreed and I don't know, I just felt uncomfortable disagreeing with everyone.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Neil. Groupthink is the subject of today's show. Groupthink refers to the type of bad decisions we make when we are in a group. Decisions that are contrary to or against what we really think. A psychology experiment conducted in the 1950s showed that a lot of people do exactly that. They submit to the will of the group.
But before we hear more about this, now would be a good time for today's quiz question, and I get to ask you, Sophie.
Okay, what is it?
In which story by Hans Christian Andersen does a young boy dare to tell the truth when everyone else goes along with an obvious lie? Is it A, the red shoes, B, the Snow Queen, or C, the Emperor's new clothes?
Okay, I think it's C, the Emperor's new clothes.
Well, we'll find out later on in the show if that's right or not. Now, the psychologist Solomon Asch is well known for his conformity experiments from the 1950s. Can you tell us what conformity means, please, Sophie?
Conformity means behaviour that is the same as the way most other people behave. Asch's main finding was that group pressure can change a person's opinion of even obvious facts.
And what did this Asch test involve?
123 male participants were shown a card with a line on it, followed by another card with 3 lines on it. The participants were then asked to say which line matched the line on the first card in length. The right answer was plain to see, but the participants felt pressurised into saying the wrong answer.
Why would they do that?
Because the majority of people taking part in the experiment had been told to give the wrong answer. Let's hear Professor Nick Chater's explanation. He works at the Warwick Business School here in the UK.
And by the time it comes to you, a whole list of people have said something plainly wrong. And you are either going to have to fold and say, well, I just agree with them, or you're going to rather uncomfortably say, well, I think it's one, actually. And most people, most of the time, tend to fold.
Professor Nick Chater, he uses the word fold, which means you give up. But Sophie, if people are uncomfortable about supporting the wrong answer or something they don't believe in, why do they do it?
Because even though we might feel uncomfortable going along with or agreeing with something we don't believe, we're even more uncomfortable about disagreeing with the group.
Well, I didn't realise that people were such sheep. I have a will of steel, Sophie.
Is that right? So, your will of steel, or strong determination, somehow melted away in the staff meeting yesterday, I suppose?
Well, of course, yes.
Let's move on and consider briefly how social media encourages groupthink.
Yes, there's a real danger with something like, for example, the Twitter, the social networking service, because when an opinion on Twitter starts to trend, It can take on a momentum of its own, and people adopt it simply because it's popular, not because they really believe it.
And momentum means a force that keeps something going once it has started. Let's hear from journalist and author Jon Ronson. He has an interesting opinion about this.
One of the ironies here is that on social media, we all like to see ourselves as non-conformists. But when we all get together in a group, what we're doing is using our individual non-conformity to create a more conformist world. So if somebody steps out of line, all us non-conformists in this frightened conformist way tear them apart. It's like we're defining the boundaries of normality by tearing apart the people on the outside.
Jon Ronson. Are you a non-conformist then, Neil? Someone who thinks and behaves differently from other people?
I'm not the type that Jon Ronson's describing, one who joins up with other so-called non-conformists to bully people with different views. Now, remember I asked you earlier, in which story by Hans Christian Andersen does a young boy dare to tell the truth when everyone else goes along with an obvious lie? Is it A, The Red Shoes, B, The Snow Queen, or C, The Emperor's New Clothes?
I guess C, The Emperor's New Clothes.
And you were right, Sophie.
Yay!
The Emperor's New Clothes is a story by Hans Christian Andersen about two weavers who promise an emperor a new suit of clothes that is invisible to those who are stupid or incompetent. No one dares to say that he doesn't see any suit of clothes until a child cries out, but he isn't wearing anything at all.
It's a great story and a lesson to us all. Now, can we hear the words we learnt today, please?
They are decaffeinated, groupthink, contrary to, conformity, fold, going along with, will of steel, momentum, nonconformist.
Well, that's the end of today's 6 Minute English. Don't forget to join us again soon.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Sophie. Neil, what are you afraid of?
I'm not keen on anything with wings, but I particularly hate moths. They're disgusting with their fat, hairy bodies and fluttery wings.
Oh, Neil, moths are completely harmless. They aren't something to be scared of.
Yes, they are. Oh, they get in my face and my hair. It makes my flesh creep just thinking about them.
If something makes your flesh creep, it makes you feel very frightened. Well, I hope you're going to survive the show today, Neil, because it's all about animal phobias. And a phobia is a strong and irrational fear. That's a fear not based on reason.
OK, I'll try. Do you have any animal phobias, Sophie?
I can't stand dogs.
Man's best friend? How can you not like dogs? They're cute and lovable. They protect you. They can do tricks.
Look, for you it's moths, and that's pretty ridiculous, by the way. And for me it's dogs, and that isn't ridiculous. Dogs can be aggressive. They have sharp teeth, they bare their teeth and bark.
What, like this?
Oh, yes, and please turn that off. It's upsetting me. It's time for today's quiz question. Can you tell me, Neil, what's the word that describes an irrational fear of insects? Is it A, etomophobia, B, thanatophobia, or C, pogonophobia?
I'll say thanatophobia.
Well, we'll find out if you got the answer right later on in the show. But now let's listen to Dr. Dean Burnett, neuroscientist at Cardiff University in the UK, talking about what causes phobic reactions in us.
The sensory information is just relayed directly into your brain. One part of it's routed into the cortex, where it's sort of thought about. That's that thing. I know that from the last time I experienced this. And you can rationalise your way through it. But it also sends a message directly to the amygdala, which immediately triggers the fight-or-flight response. Bang, fire alarm, off it goes, flood the body just in case. It's a survival mechanism.
Dr. Dean Burnett there. So the sensory information for me is a moth fluttering around, getting in my hair.
That's right, or for me, it's a dog getting anywhere near me. Anyway, this information goes into our brains and is processed in two different parts of the brain, the central cortex and the amygdala.
And the information sent to the central cortex triggers a rational response, like, oh, it's only a harmless moth. And the stuff that goes to the amygdala triggers an instinctive reaction, the fight or flight response, like, ah, it's a disgusting moth, get away from me.
The fight or flight response is a normal response to stress or danger, and it involves the hormone adrenaline being pumped quickly around the body. The problem is, this response can get triggered where there isn't any danger, and this is at the heart of what a phobia is.
So that's the moth flying in my face while I'm reading in bed, and I feel my heart beating so fast I think I'm going to pass out and I nearly die from anxiety.
Poor Neil. Pass out means to faint or lose consciousness, by the way. Well, we're going to hear from Stephen and Rena now, two self-confessed arachnophobes. They have strong emotional reactions just like you, Neil. Can you identify which animal they fear?
So when I see a spider, I feel like I've been punched in the chest.
Complete fear. It's absolutely paralysing. They've never been okay with me. I've always hated them.
I spent a lot of time driving around in the car afraid to go home while my husband worked in London.
All rationality goes out the window and my emotions completely take over.
I just run.
So, arachnophobes have a strong fear of spiders, and it's the most common animal phobia, apparently.
You could understand that if you were living in Australia, where a bite from a spider might kill you, but the little spiders you get here in the UK don't seem threatening at all.
Yes, but recent research has shown that we have a reflexive awareness of spiders, whether we fear them or not, which means we can spot them automatically without thinking about it. And we don't have the same reflexive awareness of houseflies or moths, for example.
I expect this awareness is to do with our ancestors. It would have been extremely useful to spot a spider as an early human on the plains of the African savannah. A bite might kill you or make you vulnerable to attack from other animals.
You're right, Neil. But do you think you were right about today's quiz question? I asked, what's the word that describes an irrational fear of insects? Is it A, etomophobia, B, thanatophobia, or C, pagonophobia?
I said thanatophobia.
That's the wrong answer. It's actually A, entomophobia. Entomophobia, also known as insectophobia, is a specific phobia characterised by an excessive or unrealistic fear of one or more classes of insect. Thanatophobia is the fear of death, and pagonophobia is the fear of beards, or bearded people.
Well, moths are kind of hairy. Let's remind ourselves of some of the words we heard today. Make your flesh creep. Phobia. Irrational. Fight or flight response. Pass out. Arachnophobes. Reflexive awareness.
And that's the end of today's 6 Minute English. Don't forget to join us again soon.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
I'm writing my birthday wish list, Beth. Listen, I want a new laptop, a gold Rolex watch, and a red sports car.
Phew, that is quite a lot, Neil. Isn't that a bit greedy?
So what? Greed is good. We're genetically built to want things that increase our social status, power, and material possessions like money, a nice house, a fast car, all that stuff.
I'm not so sure, Neil. Remember, greed is also one of the 7 deadly sins.
In this programme, we'll be discussing greed, the desire to accumulate stuff, keep it for yourself, and not share it with others. And, of course, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary as well. But first, I have a question for you, Beth. You reminded me of a famous quote by one of history's greatest leaders. The world has enough for everyone's need, but not everyone's greed. But who said it? Was it A, the Dalai Lama, B, Mahatma Gandhi, or C, Martin Luther King?
I think it was Mahatma Gandhi.
OK, Beth, I'll reveal the correct answer at the end of the programme. At the neurological level, greed is controlled by the reward centre of the brain. Greedy people feel good when they choose the stuff they want, And this happens at the unconscious emotional level of the brain, meaning there's little conscious awareness about how greedy actions might affect others or be unfair.
But what does this look like in real life? That's what University of California psychologist Professor Paul Piff investigated using the classic family board game Monopoly. The game was rigged to give one rich player an advantage by letting them roll 2 dice instead of 1, and collecting twice as much money as the poor player when passing go.
So what happened when Professor Piff asked the rich players why they had inevitably won the fixed game? Listen to the answer he gave to BBC Radio 4 programme 7 Deadly Psychologies.
They took credit for their wins. They talked about how they'd controlled their own outcomes. They talked about how it was the decisions they'd made that had led to their being ultimately victorious, and not that flip of a coin that randomly got them into that position of privilege in the first place. Now, I don't know that this is a perfect model for how privilege, success, or wealth operates in everyday life. Some people indeed have worked themselves up by their own bootstraps and get what they have because they worked hard.
Interestingly, the rich players took credit for winning. If you take credit for something, you accept praise and recognition for doing something, whether or not that praise and recognition is deserved.
In fact, it was the fixed game that determined who would win and lose, not anything the players did. Professor Piff uses the expression the flip of a coin to describe something which is based solely on random chance, like when you flip a coin into the air. Whether it lands on heads or tails is pure luck.
Yet the winning players claimed they won thanks to their own skill and ability. Here, Professor Piff uses another idiom, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, meaning to improve your situation through your own hard work, without help from anyone else.
Worryingly, the experiment showed how feeling financially better off than others can easily change into feeling better than others. And the reason behind these feelings could be what money buys you, especially one thing: space.
If you're rich, you own a big house. At work, you have your own spacious private office. You live in your own private bubble. Here's Professor Piff again, talking with BBC Radio 4's 7 Deadly Psychologies.
People who are well off are just more socially independent. They don't need others in their lives as much. And when you don't need others, well, your empathy might suffer as a result.
People who are well off and rich enough to do what they want rely on other people less. As a result, they may lack empathy, the ability to share someone else's feelings by imagining what it would be like to be them.
Maybe it's not greed itself that's bad, but the things we're greedy for. Being greedy for social justice or a clean environment is good, right? Something to be admired by the world leader in your question, Neil.
Yes, I asked you who said the world has enough for everyone's need, but not everyone's greed. You said it was Mahatma Gandhi, which was the correct answer, Beth. OK, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned from this programme, starting with stuff, an informal word for material possessions.
To take credit for something means to allow people to believe that something you did deserves praise or recognition.
The phrase "a flip of a coin" refers to an action or decision based on luck or random chance.
If you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you improve your situation through your own efforts, without help from anyone else.
Someone who is well off is rich enough to be able to have most of what they want.
And finally, empathy means experiencing someone else's feelings by putting yourself in their place. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Join us again soon for more trending topics and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minute English. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
Have you ever been sent a text reminding you about a doctor's appointment, or impulsively bought something on the internet because there was only one left? If any of these have happened to you, then you've been nudged.
A nudge is a subtle way of altering human behaviour. It's a powerful way for governments, advertisers and social media companies to encourage, or nudge, people into making choices that benefit themselves and society as a whole.
Imagine the government want people to eat better. It might encourage supermarkets to put healthy snacks in easy-to-reach shelves near the checkout and hide the chocolate bars out of sight on the top shelf. Shoppers are being nudged to eat better.
Well, that's the idea anyway. But often nudging is used less to benefit society and more to make money for big business. And it happens more often than people realise. So in this programme, we'll be asking whether the idea behind nudging to influence human behaviour for good is still true today. And as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary as well.
But first, I have a question for you, Beth. Another example of nudging happened in Woolwich, an area of London which in 2011 had a problem with antisocial behaviour, and particularly with shop windows being smashed. The local authority decided to use nudging to fix the problem by painting pictures on the shop windows. But what did they paint? Was it A, cute kittens, B, babies' faces, or C, barking dogs?
I guess barking dogs would keep the window breakers away.
OK, Beth, I'll reveal the correct answer later in the programme. Nudging started in 2008 with the publication of a book by Nobel Prize-winning economist Professor Richard Taylor.
Professor Taylor's ideas about how to gently persuade people into making good decisions became known as nudge theory. Advertising executive Rory Sutherland introduced nudge theory to his agency, Ogilvy. Here's Rory explaining more to BBC Radio 4 programme Analysis.
Let's say you make the profitable option button green and highly attractive. The less profitable option, you make it kind of grey and kind of manky looking, okay? That would be an example of something which is, a nudge not necessarily used in the best interests of the consumer.
Advertisers use colours to nudge customers towards the profitable option, the one which is the most likely to make money. These appear brightly coloured and attractive on the screen, whereas less profitable options are made to look manky, a slang word meaning dirty and unattractive.
Here, nudging isn't being used for the public good. These dark nudges, also called sludge, make money for a company, but are not always in the best interests of the consumer. If something is in your best interests, it's the most advantageous and beneficial thing for you to do.
Dark nudges have caused many to question the morality of nudging, including Neil Levy, Professor of Ethics at Oxford University, speaking here to BBC Radio 4 programme Analysis.
The big one, the one people have concentrated on, is that it's paternalistic. That is, that nudge might be in our interests, but we want to make our own decisions. That's people worry that nudges infantilize us. It's undermining our autonomy.
Critics of nudging call it paternalistic, meaning it wants to make decisions for people rather than letting them take responsibility for themselves. They also claim nudging infantilizes people. It treats them like children, and as a result, people lose autonomy, the ability to make your own decisions about what to do, rather than being told by someone else.
I guess nudging itself is neither good nor bad. It just depends how you use it.
Well, let's look on the positive side by revealing the answer to your question, Neil.
Right, I asked you how authorities in Woolwich, in southeast London, nudged antisocial window breakers to behave nicely.
I guessed it was by painting pictures of scary barking dogs on the windows.
Which was the wrong answer, I'm afraid, Beth. In fact, Woolwich Council hired graffiti artists to paint pictures of local babies' faces onto the window shutters. Not even the most hard-hearted criminals smashed those windows, and antisocial behaviour fell by 18% in 1 year. OK, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned in this programme about nudging, ways of gently persuading or encouraging someone to take decisions.
Something which is profitable makes a profit or is likely to make money.
Manky is slang for dirty and unattractive.
If something is in your best interests, it's the most advantageous, beneficial thing for you to do.
A paternalistic person prefers making decisions for other people rather than letting them take responsibility for their own lives.
To infantilize someone means to treat them as if they were a child.
And finally, autonomy is the ability to make your own decisions about what to do, rather than being told by someone else. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Remember to join us again next time for more topical discussion and useful vocabulary here at 6 Minute English. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.